Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the main control room of the Starship Defiant, staring at the green words on the computer screen. He had read the message so many times that he could say it from memory, but it still made his stomach feel tight. Every time he looked at it, the message had come from somewhere far away in space, from creatures that humans had never seen before. It was written in perfect English, which was the first thing that made Jake worried. How did they know human language so well? How long had they been watching Earth? Commander Lisa Torres walked up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. She was his second in command and had been fighting alongside him for 12 years. If anyone could help him figure this out, it would be her. Still reading that thing? She asked, looking at the screen. You know it by heart already, eh? Jake turned around and looked at her. His face showed all the worry he was feeling inside. Lisa, they want to test us. 5 fights against 5 different kinds of aliens. If we lose, Earth gets nothing. If we win, we get to join their big space club. Lisa sat down in the chair next to him. She had been thinking about this message for days, too. What do we know about these aliens? Jake pressed a button, and the screen changed to show pictures and information about their enemies. The first picture showed a huge creature that looked like it was made of stone and metal. It was almost 8 feet tall and had sharp points sticking out of its body like armor. This is a Kronari, Jake said. They are the strongest fighters in the galaxy.
They
Can lift things that way as much as a car with one hand. Their skin is so hard that bullets bounce off it. The next picture showed something that looked like a snake with arms and legs. It was moving so fast in the picture that it looked blurry. The Vexus, Jake continued. They can move faster than our eyes can see. They can run across a room and hit you before you even know they moved. The third picture showed a creature with a huge head and small body. Its eyes were bigger than human heads and seemed to glow with intelligence. The Nethic are the smartest beings in the galaxy. They can solve problems that would take our best scientists years to figure out. They think so fast that they can plan 100 moves ahead in any fight. The fourth picture showed something that looked like it was made of rock and fire. It was. Standing in what looked like the middle of a volcano, the Gorvani can live anywhere. Hot places, cold places, places with no air, places with poison in the air. Nothing can kill them. They just keep going no matter what. The last picture showed a creature that seemed to be changing shape even as they watched. Like one thing. Then it looked like something else completely different. And the Zephrians, Jake said with a tired voice. They can change their bodies to be whatever they need to be. If they need to be stronger, they become stronger. If they need to be faster, they become faster. They adapt to anything. Lisa looked at all the pictures and shook her head. So let me get this straight. They want us to fight against the strongest, fastest, smartest, toughest, and most adaptable creatures in the galaxy. And if we lose, Earth gets treated like a planet full of children who cannot take care of themselves. That's about right, Jake said. Lisa was quiet for a long time. She looked at the pictures again and again. Finally, she started to smile. What are you smiling about? Jake asked. This is serious. I know it's serious, Lisa said. But I think these aliens made a big mistake. What kind of mistake? Lisa stood up and walked to the big window that looked out at space. Earth was visible in the distance, a blue and white ball floating in the darkness. They think they know what makes a good fighter, she said. They think it's about being the strongest, or the fastest, or the smartest. But they don't understand what makes humans different. Jake walked over to stand next to her. What makes us different? Earth, Lisa said simply. Look at our planet, Jake. Really look at it. Jake looked at Earth, floating in space. Beautiful and peaceful from here. It looks nice from up here, he said. That's because we're far away, Lisa said. But think about what it's really like down there. Think about all the things that try to kill humans every single day. Jake started to understand what she was talking about. The weather. Hurricanes that can destroy entire cities. Tornadoes that can pick up houses and throw them around like toys. Earthquakes that can split the ground open. Volcanoes that can bury entire towns in hot rock. The animals, Jake added. Bears that can rip a person apart with their claws. Sharks that can bite a person in half. Snakes with poison that can kill in minutes. Tiny bugs that carry diseases that can kill thousands of people. The environment, Jake said, getting excited now. Deserts where the sun can cook you to death. Mountains where the cold can freeze you solid. Oceans where you can drown if you don't know how to swim. Forests where you can get lost and never find your way out. Lisa turned to face Jake. Every single human who has ever lived has had to deal with all of these things. We don't have thick skin like the Kronari. We don't have super speed like the Vexus. We don't have big brains like the Nethic. We don't have tough bodies like the Gorvani. We can't change our shape like the Zephrians. So what do we have? Jake asked. We have something better, Lisa. Said we have the ability to survive anything. Every human is a walking example of how to stay alive when everything around you is trying to kill you. Jake thought about this. He remembered growing up in Minnesota, where the winters were so cold that you could die if you stayed outside too long. He remembered visiting his grandfather in Florida, where hurricanes came every year, and everyone just accepted that they might lose their house. He remembered his time in the military, fighting in places where the heat could kill you during the day and the cold could kill you at night. These aliens, Lisa continued, they've been living safe lives for thousands of years. They train in special schools with teachers who show them the right way to fight. They follow rules that have been around forever. They fight with honor and tradition. And humans learn to fight by trying not to die every day of their lives. We don't fight with honor. We fight to survive. We don't follow rules. We do whatever it takes to stay alive. Ouch. Jake started to smile too. So when they send their best warriors ... we send our best survivors, Lisa finished. And on a planet like Earth, that's the same thing as sending our best killers. They stood there looking at Earth for a while, both of them thinking about what this meant. Finally, Jake spoke. We need to pick our team carefully. We can't just send our strongest soldiers or our smartest officers. We need to send humans who know how to survive impossible situations. I know exactly who we need, Lisa said. People who have lived through things that would kill most aliens before they even knew what hit them. Jake nodded. Send out the message. Tell them we're looking for volunteers for the most dangerous mission in human history. Tell them we need people who are too stubborn to die. As Lisa walked away to send the message, Jake looked back at Earth one more time. The aliens thought. They were sending their best warriors to fight humans. What they didn't understand was that they were about to fight creatures who had been shaped by the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. Every human was a survivor. The survivors Jake knew were the most dangerous opponents of all. Colonel Ryan Blake walked into the large meeting room deep inside the Pentagon. The room was filled with files, computers, and photographs of soldiers from all over the world. For the past 3 weeks, he had been reading about thousands of men and women who had volunteered for the most dangerous mission in human history. The message had gone out to every military base on Earth. They needed 5 people who could represent humanity in fights against alien warriors. The response had been overwhelming. Over 50,000 soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines had volunteered to risk their lives for Earth. But Blake wasn't looking for the biggest or strongest humans. He wasn't looking for the ones with the most medals or the highest test scores. He was looking for something different. He was looking for people who had survived things that should have killed them. Blake picked up the first file and opened it. Inside was a photograph of a young man with scars on his face and hands. The name at the top of the page read Sergeant Alex Carter, United States Marine Corps. Blake had read this file so many times that he knew it by heart, but he read it again. Anyway, Alex Carter had grown up in Alaska, where the winters were so cold, the cars wouldn't start, and people could freeze to death in minutes. When he was 12, he had gotten lost in a blizzard and survived for 3 days by digging a hole in the snow and eating ice to stay alive. Carter had joined the Marines when he was 18. He had served 3 tours in the desert where the temperature reached over 120 degrees during the day and dropped below freezing at night. He had been buried alive when a building collapsed during an earthquake and had dug himself out with his bare hands. He had survived a helicopter crash in the mountains and walked 15 miles with a broken leg to reach safety. The most impressive thing about Carter wasn't any single event. It was that he had faced death dozens of times and had never given up. When other soldiers talked about impossible situations, Carter would just shrug and say it wasn't as bad as Tuesday night in Alaska. Blake said. Carter's file aside and picked up the next one. This one belonged to Dr. Nina Walsh, a Navy medical officer who had spent her career keeping people alive in places where death was always nearby. Walsh had grown up in Louisiana, where hurricanes came every few years and turned entire cities into disaster zones. She had learned to perform surgery by flashlight when the power went out, and to find medicine in places where hospitals had been destroyed. She had saved lives during floods, tornadoes, and earthquakes. During her military service, Walsh had worked in field hospitals where wounded soldiers came in faster than she could treat them. She had performed operations while rockets exploded around her and had kept people alive with equipment that barely worked. She had once spent 18 hours straight operating on wounded soldiers during a battle, never stopping to eat or sleep. What made Walsh special wasn't just her medical skills. It was her ability to think clearly when everything around her was chaos. While other doctors panicked, Walsh would calmly figure out how to save the most lives with whatever she had available. The third file belonged to Lieutenant Commander Pete Rodriguez, Navy pilot who had learned to fly in some of the most dangerous conditions on Earth. Rodriguez had grown up in Florida, where hurricanes were a regular part of life. He had learned to drive boats through waves that were 30 feet high and to fly planes through storms that could tear aircraft apart. Rodriguez had flown rescue missions in weather that kept other pilots on the ground. He had landed helicopters on ships that were being tossed around by giant waves. He had flown through sandstorms in the desert and snowstorms in the mountains. He had crashed 3 times and walked away from all 3 crashes. Other pilots talked about Rodriguez like he was magic. They said he could fly anything in any weather and that he never got scared. The truth was simpler. Rodriguez had grown up in a place where the weather tried to kill you every few months. Flying through an alien storm couldn't be worse than flying through a hurricane. Blake picked up the 4th file. This one belonged to Corporal Amy Johnson, an Army demolitions expert who understood that sometimes the only way to survive was to blow things up. Johnson had grown up in Oklahoma, where tornadoes were so common that every house had a storm shelter. She had learned early that sometimes the best way to deal with a problem was to destroy it completely. When she was 16, a tornado had trapped her family in their house. Johnson had used her father's tools to cut through the debris and get her family to safety in the Army. Johnson had become an expert at using explosives to solve problems. She had blown up bridges to stop enemy advances and had used explosives to clear paths through mountains. She had once used a homemade bomb to bring down a building that was about to collapse on a group of civilians. Johnson's file was full of stories about times when she had saved lives by destroying things. She understood that sometimes you had to break something to fix it. She also understood that controlled destruction was just another tool for survival. The last file belonged to Captain Dan Murphy, Special Forces soldier who had spent his career turning bad situations into good ones. Murphy had grown up in the Rocky Mountains, where avalanches, bears, and cold weather were constant threats. He had learned to hunt, track, and survive in places where most people would die in hours. Murphy's military record was mostly classified, but Blake knew enough to be impressed. Murphy had spent years working behind enemy lines in places where being caught meant certain death. He had survived in jungles, deserts, and frozen wastelands. He had lived for months, eating only what he could find and drinking water from streams and puddles. What made Murphy special was his ability to adapt to any situation. He could speak 6 languages, could blend in with local populations, and could make weapons and tools from whatever was available. He had once spent 3 months living with a tribe in the Amazon jungle and had learned to hunt with spears and arrows. Blake looked at all 5 files, spread out on the table. Each person had survived things that would kill most humans. More importantly, each person had learned to thrive in conditions that were designed to kill them. The door opened, and Admiral Morrison walked in with Commander Torres. They looked at the files on the table, and then at Blake. "These are our champions," Morrison asked. Blake nodded. "These are people who have been fighting for survival their entire lives. They've faced every kind of death that Earth can throw at them, and they're still here." Torres picked up Carter's file and read through it quickly. "This Marine has been buried alive, crashed in helicopters, and survived in temperatures that would kill most people. How is he still alive?" "Because he's stubborn," Blake said. "All of them are. They refuse to die no matter what happens to them. Morrison looked at the pictures of the 5 humans. The aliens are sending their best warriors, perfect fighters, who have trained for centuries in special schools. And we're sending people who have been trained by Earth itself, Blake said. People who have learned that there's no such thing as a fair fight when you're trying to survive. Torres sat down the file she was reading. The aliens think they understand what makes a good fighter. They think it's about strength or speed or intelligence. They're wrong, Blake said. The best fighters are the ones who refuse to quit. The ones who keep going when everything tells them to give up. The ones who have learned that survival is more important than honor. Morrison nodded slowly. When do we tell them? Tomorrow, Blake said. We bring them here and we explain what they're going to face. We tell them that they're not just fighting for themselves. They're fighting for every human who has ever lived. Blake looked at the files one more time. 5 humans who had learned to survive in impossible conditions. 5 people who had been shaped by the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. 5 representatives of a species that had never learned to give up. The aliens had no idea what they were about to face. Nexus Station was the biggest thing Alex Carter had ever seen. The space station was so large that it had its own gravity and weather systems. As the human transport ship docked, Carter looked out the window at the thousands of alien ships already. They're ships that looked like giant insects, ships that glowed with their own light, ships that seemed to be made of living metal. First time seeing this many aliens? Dr. Nina Walsh asked, sitting next to him. She was looking out the window. 2, but she seemed more curious than nervous. Yeah, Carter said. Kinda makes you realize how small Earth really is. Lieutenant Commander Pete Rodriguez was checking his equipment one more time. Small planet? Maybe. But we're not small people. Corporal Amy Johnson was sitting quietly in the corner, thinking about the explosives she had been allowed to bring. The aliens had rules about what weapons could be used in the trials. But they didn't seem to understand that humans could make weapons out of almost anything. Captain Dan Murphy wasn't looking out the window at all. He was watching the other humans and thinking about how they would work together. He'd read all their files and knew they were good at staying alive. But this was different from anything any of them had faced before. The transport ship finished docking and the doors opened. The 5 humans walked out into Nexus Station and immediately felt the weight of thousands of alien eyes watching them. The main area of the station was huge, with different sections for different types of aliens. Some areas had thick air that humans couldn't breathe. Other areas had gravity so strong that it would crush a human instantly. A tall, thin alien approached them. It had blue skin and 4 arms and spoke in perfect English. Welcome to Nexus Station. I am Coordinator Vex. I will be your guide during your stay here. Carter looked around at all the aliens staring at them. Are we the first humans they've seen? Yes, Vex said. Your species is new to us. Many of our people are curious about you. What are they thinking? Walsh asked. Vex was quiet for a moment. They were wondering how beings so small and weak can claim to be warriors. Rodriguez laughed. They think we're weak, compared to our champions, yes? Vex said. The Kronari champion weighs over 400 pounds and can lift a vehicle over his head.
Yes.
The Vexus champion can move so fast that security cameras cannot track him. The Nethic champion has an intelligence rating that is off our measurement scale. Johnson looked at the aliens watching them. They think we can't compete with that. Many do, Vex said. But some of our oldest leaders remember stories about worlds like yours. They call them Deathworlds. Planets where life is constantly fighting just to survive. Murphy nodded. Earth is definitely one of those. Vex led them through the station toward their living quarters. As they walked, Carter noticed that the aliens weren't just watching them. They were studying them, looking at how they moved, how they carried themselves, how they reacted to new situations. They're trying to figure us out, he said quietly to the others. Let them look, Walsh said. They won't understand until the fighting starts. Their quarters were simple but comfortable. Each human had their own room with a bed, desk, and computer terminal. There was a common area where they could meet and plan their strategy. That evening, They gathered in the common area to discuss what they had learned about their opponents. Murphy had been reading files all day and had information about each of the alien champions. The Kronari champion is named Thax, he said. He's been fighting for over 200 years and has never lost a battle. He fights with traditional weapons and relies on his strength and natural armor. Strength against strength won't work, Carter said. I'm strong for a human, but I'm not strong enough to arm wrestle a truck. That's why you won't arm wrestle him, Murphy said. You'll fight him the way humans fight everything else that's bigger and stronger than we are. How's that? Carter asked. Dirty Murphy said with a smile. Murphy continued reading. The Vexus champion is called Zith. She can move faster than human eyes can follow. She fights by hitting her enemies dozens of times before they can react. Rodriguez thought about this. Speed is tricky. You can't outrun something that's faster than you. But you can predict where it's going to be. Humans are good at that, Walsh said. We've been dodging things that are faster than us for thousands of years. Cars, trains, bullets. The Nethic champion is named Korix, Murphy continued. He can think through complex problems in seconds. He fights by predicting what his opponent will do and countering it before they even move. So he's smart, Johnson said, but is he creative? What do you mean? Murphy asked. Smart people think in patterns, Johnson said. They use logic and reason to solve problems. But humans don't always use logic. Sometimes we do things that don't make sense just because they work. Walsh nodded. Chaos theory. Sometimes the best solution is the one that shouldn't work. Turn to the next file. The Gorvani champion is called Bruthan. He can survive in any environment. Extreme heat, extreme cold, no air, poisonous atmosphere. He fights by wearing down his opponents until they collapse. Endurance, Carter said. That's something humans understand. We've been outlasting things. That should kill us since we first walked upright. The last champion is the Zephrian, named Flux, Murphy said. She can change her body to adapt to any situation. If she needs to be stronger, she becomes stronger. If she needs to be faster, she becomes faster. Adaptation, Rodriguez said. But there's a difference between changing your body and changing your mind. What do you mean? Walsh asked. Why, she can change her physical form, Rodriguez said. But can she change the way she thinks? Humans adapt mentally as well as physically. We don't just change our bodies to fit the situation, we change our entire approach. The 5 humans spent the rest of the evening planning their strategies. They didn't plan like soldiers preparing for battle. They planned like survivors preparing for disasters. The next morning, they were taken to the arena where the first fight would happen. The arena was a huge circular room with seats for thousands of spectators. Aliens of dozens of different species filled the stands, all watching the humans with curiosity. Carter stood in the center of the arena, waiting for his opponent. The Kronari champion Thax entered from the opposite side, and the crowd gasped. Thax was massive, covered in what looked like bone armor, with arms as thick as tree trunks. He carried a weapon that looked like a cross between a sword and a club. The referee, another alien species, announced the rules. This is a combat trial. Victory goes to the warrior who defeats his opponent. Death is not required, but it is acceptable. Warriors may use any weapons or tactics they choose. Thax raised his weapon and roared. The sound was so loud that some of the humans in the crowd covered their ears. Carter just stood there, looking small and fragile compared to the alien warrior. You ready, human? Thax asked in a voice like grinding stone. Carter looked up at the massive alien and smiled. I've been ready my whole life. The referee signaled the start of the fight. Thax charged forward, his weapon raised high, ready to end the fight with one powerful blow. Carter didn't try to block or dodge. Instead, he did something that no alien warrior had ever done in the history of the trials. He threw dirt in Thax's eyes. The crowd went silent. Thax stumbled, blinded and confused. Carter rolled between the alien's legs and came up behind him. While Thax was trying to clear his vision, Carter grabbed a piece of broken concrete from the arena floor and hit the alien in the back of the knee. Thax fell forward, his massive weight working against him. Carter didn't stop to see if the opponent was hurt. He grabbed the alien's own weapon and used it to pin Thax to the ground. The fight was over in less than 30 seconds. The crowd was completely silent. They'd never seen anything like it. Their champion, their strongest warrior, had been defeated by a human who fought like no warrior they had ever seen. Carter helped Thax to his feet and offered him his weapon back. "Good fight," he said. Thax looked at the human with something. "Like respect, you fight without honor." "I fight to survive," Carter said. "On Earth, that's the same thing." As Carter walked back to his team, the aliens in the crowd began to understand that they were watching something new. These humans didn't fight like warriors. They fought like survivors. And survivors, they were beginning to realize, were much more dangerous than warriors. The second trial would begin in 1 hour. Dr. Nina Walsh sat in the human quarters, reading medical reports about the Vexus champion named Zith. The alien could move so fast that cameras could barely track her movements. She had won over 300 fights by hitting her opponents dozens of times before they could react. "How do you fight something you can't see coming?" Lieutenant Commander Pete Rodriguez asked, sitting across from Walsh. "You don't try to see it coming," Walsh said. "You set up a situation where it doesn't matter how fast it moves." Captain Dan Murphy was studying video recordings of previous Vexus fights. "Look at this," he said, pointing to the screen. "She always moves in straight lines. Fast but predictable patterns." "Like a hurricane," Walsh said. "Hurricanes are incredibly powerful and fast, but they follow rules. If you understand the rules, you can work with them instead of against them." Corporal Amy Johnson was preparing her equipment for the third trial. "The medical scenario is smart," she said. "Most fighters think about combat. Doctors think about problems." Walsh nodded. "Fighting is about defeating an enemy. Medicine is about solving problems with whatever you have available." An hour later, Walsh walked into the arena. The setup was different this time. Instead of an empty circle, the arena had been filled with obstacles, medical equipment, and what looked like injured aliens lying on stretchers. The alien referee announced the rules. "This is a medical emergency scenario. Both contestants must treat as many patients as possible while defending themselves from attack. Victory goes to whoever saves the most lives." Zith entered the arena from the opposite side. She was smaller than the Kronari champion, but moved with liquid grace. Even standing still, she seemed to vibrate with barely contained energy. "Ready, slow human?" Zith asked. Her voice was high and musical, but there was mockery in it. "Always." "Ready," Walsh said, checking the medical supplies nearby. The trial began. Zith immediately became a blur of motion, racing from patient to patient at impossible speed. She could examine and treat 3 patients in the time it took Walsh to reach 1. But Walsh wasn't trying to match Zith's speed. Instead, she was doing something the alien didn't expect. She was changing the environment. While Zith raced around the arena, Walsh quickly assessed which patients were most critical. Then she began moving equipment and supplies to create a more efficient workspace. She pushed several stretchers together and reorganized the medical tools. "What is the human doing?" Someone in the crowd asked Sal, noticed Walsh's strange behavior, and decided to interfere. She raced toward the human doctor, planning to knock her down and gain more time to treat patients. Walsh had been expecting this. As Zith approached at high speed, Walsh stepped aside and pulled a stretcher into the alien's path. Zith was moving too fast to stop and crashed into the medical equipment. "Speed trap," Walsh said calmly, helping Zith to her feet. "We use them on Earth to slow down fast vehicles." Zith looked confused but resumed her high-speed treatment of patients. Walsh continued working at her slower pace. But she was treating the most critical cases first and using her reorganized workspace to work more efficiently. As the trial continued, something became clear to the watching aliens. Zith was treating more patients, but Walsh was saving more lives. The human doctor was choosing which patients needed immediate attention and which ones could wait. She was making hard decisions that Zith, focused on speed, wasn't making. When the trial ended, Zith had treated 47 patients. Walsh had treated only 19. But when the judges checked the results, they found that Walsh had saved 17 lives, while Zith had saved only 12. The human wins, the referee announced. Zith stared at Walsh in confusion. I was faster. I treated more patients. How did you win? Speed isn't everything, Walsh said. Sometimes the best solution is the right choice, not the fast choice. The third trial took place the next day. Rodriguez faced the Nethic champion Corax in a test of tactical intelligence. The setup was a complex three-dimensional puzzle that required moving pieces through a maze while avoiding traps and obstacles. Corax was a creature with an enormous head and small body. His brain was 3 times larger than a human brain, and he could process information faster than any computer. This should be interesting, Rodriguez said, looking at the puzzle. I'm about to get outsmarted by someone who's probably smarter than every human who ever lived. Intelligence versus intelligence? Murphy asked. No, Rodriguez said. Intelligence versus adaptability. The trial began. Corax immediately started calculating optimal solutions, his large eyes moving rapidly. As he processed thousands of possible moves, Rodriguez took a different approach. He started moving pieces randomly, not following any logical pattern. What is the human doing? Corax asked the referee. He is not following proper tactical procedure. Rodriguez continued his seemingly random movements, but there was a method to his madness. Growing up in Florida, he had learned to fly helicopters through hurricanes. Hurricanes didn't follow logical patterns. They changed direction without warning, created unexpected wind currents, forced pilots to make split-second decisions based on instinct rather than calculation. While Corax calculated the perfect solution, Rodriguez was adapting to changing conditions. Every time the alien champion made a logical move, Rodriguez would do something that forced the situation to change. He's not trying to solve the puzzle, one of the alien spectators realized. He's changing the puzzle. Corax became frustrated. Every time he was close to completing his calculated solution, the human would make a move that created an entirely new problem. The alien champion was smarter, but he couldn't adapt fast enough to keep up with Rodriguez's constant changes. Rodriguez won by completing a solution that shouldn't have worked according to the puzzle's design. He had broken the rules in ways that the puzzle makers hadn't considered possible. Your moves were illogical, Corax said after the trial. Logic is a tool, Rodriguez said. But sometimes you need different tools. The fourth trial was Johnson's turn against the Gorvani champion Bruthin. The trial took place in an environment chamber that cycled through extreme conditions. Freezing cold, burning heat, poisonous air, crushing pressure. The winner would be whoever lasted longest. Bruthin was a creature that looked like living rock. He had survived in the cores of planets, in the vacuum of space, and in the hearts of stars. Environmental extremes couldn't hurt him. Johnson entered the chamber carrying a backpack full of equipment, ready for a camping trip, as she said. The trial began with freezing temperatures that would kill an unprotected human in minutes. Bruthin stood calmly in the center of the chamber, unaffected by the cold. Johnson immediately started working with her equipment. What is she doing? The aliens watching asked. Johnson wasn't trying to endure the conditions like Bruthin. Instead, she was changing them. She used small explosive charges to create wind patterns that moved the coldest air away from her. She built a small shelter, using debris and heated it with chemical reactions. When the chamber switched to extreme heat, Johnson used different techniques. She created shade, used evaporative cooling, and even dug into the floor to find cooler areas. She's not surviving the environment, one alien observer noted. She's controlling it. Bruthin watched the human with growing respect. He could survive anything, but he had never seen anyone actually change their environment to make survival easier. When the chamber filled with poisonous gas, Johnson used her explosives to create air currents that kept the poison away from her breathing space. When the pressure increased, she found ways to equalize it. I can outlast any environment, Bruthin said. But you are making the environment work for you instead of against you. That's what humans do, Johnson said. We don't just survive. We adapt our surroundings to help us survive. The trial continued for 6 hours. Bruthen never showed any sign of distress, but Johnson kept finding new ways to make impossible conditions manageable. Finally, the judges declared the trial a draw. Neither contestant was defeated, the referee announced, but the human showed abilities we did not expect. The final trial would be the next day. Murphy would face Flux, the Zephrian who could adapt her body to any situation. As the humans returned to their quarters, they could feel the mood in the station changing. The aliens had expected to see their champions easily defeat the weak humans. Instead, they had seen humans win through methods they had never imagined. The humans didn't fight like warriors. They fought like survivors who had learned to turn any situation to their advantage. "One more trial," Murphy said. "One more chance to show them what Earth taught us," Carter said. "Tomorrow, we finish this," Walsh said. The aliens were beginning to understand that strength, speed, and intelligence weren't everything. The humans had something different, something that made them dangerous in ways the galaxy had never seen before. They had the ability to turn any disadvantage into an advantage. And that, the aliens were learning, was the most dangerous ability of all. Captain Dan Murphy stood in the arena, looking across at his final opponent. Flux, the Zephrian champion, was unlike any creature he had ever seen. Her body seemed to flow like liquid, constantly changing shape and color. One moment she looked almost human. The next moment she had extra arms or wings or armor-like skin. "This is the final trial," the alien referee announced. "Victory in this combat will determine the outcome of all trials. The winner's species will be declared superior." The arena had been set up with multiple environments. One section was filled with water, another with thick jungle growth, another with rocky cliffs and caves. Each area presented different challenges and opportunities. Murphy had spent the night thinking about this fight. Flux could adapt her body to become stronger, faster, tougher, or gain new abilities. She could become whatever she needed to be to win any fight, but Murphy had realized something important. Flux could change her body, but she still thought like a Zephrian. She still fought like someone who had trained in schools and followed rules. She adapted her form, but not her mind. "Are you ready, human?" Flux asked. Her voice changed as she spoke, becoming deeper and more threatening. "I was born ready," Murphy said. The trial began. Flux immediately changed her form, growing larger and stronger. She charged at Murphy with arms that had become like sledgehammers. Murphy didn't try to fight her strength against strength. Instead, he ran. "The human is fleeing." Someone in the crowd shouted, but Murphy wasn't fleeing. He was moving to the water section of the arena. Flux followed him, her body adapting as she ran. By the time she reached the water, she had grown gills and webbed hands for swimming. Murphy dove into the water and swam toward the bottom. Flux followed, now perfectly adapted for underwater combat. But when she reached him, Murphy wasn't trying to fight. He was doing something with the arena's equipment. Murphy had noticed that the water section had artificial currents and filtering systems. While Flux was adapting her body for underwater combat, Murphy was figuring out how the systems worked. He found the controls and changed the water flow. Suddenly, the currents in the water shifted dramatically. Flux, despite her adaptations, was caught off guard by the change. She was swept toward a filtration intake. Struggling against the artificial current, Murphy surfaced and climbed out of the water. Flux managed to escape from the current by changing her body again, but Murphy was already moving to the next section of the arena. "He's not fighting her," Dr. Walsh observed from the spectator area. "He's fighting the situation." In the jungle section, Flux adapted again. Her skin became bark-like for camouflage, and she grew claws for climbing. She moved through the artificial trees like a predator, hunting Murphy. But Murphy was using tactics he had learned in real jungles on Earth. He wasn't trying to hide from Flux. He was setting traps. He used vines to create snares and positioned fallen logs to create obstacles. When Flux found him, she discovered that the jungle had become a maze designed to slow her down and tire her out. "Your adaptations are impressive," Murphy called out as he led her through his makeshift obstacle course. "But adaptation is more than just changing your body," Flux grew frustrated. Every time she adapted to overcome one obstacle, Murphy created a new one. She became stronger to break through barriers, but Murphy made her waste energy breaking things that didn't need to be broken. She became faster to catch him, but Murphy used her speed against her by creating situations where being fast was dangerous. The fight moved to the rocky cliff section. Flux adapted for climbing, growing specialized hands and feet for gripping stone. Murphy climbed ahead of her, but he wasn't trying to escape. He was weakening the cliff face. Murphy had learned mountain climbing in the Rockies, where avalanches and rock slides were constant dangers. We knew how to read stone and understand which rocks were stable and which were ready to fall. As Flux climbed after him, Murphy carefully loosened keystones. When Flux was halfway up the cliff, Murphy triggered a small rock slide. Not enough to seriously hurt her, but enough to send her tumbling back to the bottom. She landed hard but immediately adapted, growing thicker skin and better padding. She keeps adapting her body, Sergeant Carter observed. But she's not adapting. Her strategy? Murphy climbed back down and faced Flux in the center of the arena. She had grown tired from constantly changing her form and chasing him through different environments. Her adaptations were perfect for each individual challenge, but she had been reacting to Murphy's moves instead of making her own plans. "You fight strangely, human," Flux said, breathing heavily. "You do not use your body's abilities. You change the battlefield instead." "That's what humans do," Murphy said. "We don't just adapt our bodies, we adapt everything." Flux charged at him one final time, her form shifting to become the perfect combat shape, strong, fast, armored, and deadly. Murphy stood his ground and waited. At the last second, Murphy did something that no one expected. He didn't dodge or attack. Instead, he threw his arms around Flux in what looked like a bear hug. But he wasn't trying to hurt her. He was holding on. "What is he doing?" the aliens in the crowd asked. Murphy was doing something he had learned. During survival training, when you can't overcome a force, sometimes you can redirect it. As Flux tried to break free from his grip, Murphy used her own strength and momentum to throw both of them toward a specific part of the arena. They crashed into a section where Murphy had previously weakened the floor. The impact sent them both falling through into the maintenance area below the arena. Flux landed hard and was momentarily stunned. Murphy landed on top of debris that cushioned his fall. By the time Flux recovered and adapted to the new environment, Murphy was already climbing back up to the arena floor. The trial rules stated that victory went to whoever was the last fighter standing in the arena. Murphy reached the arena floor and helped Flux climb up after him. "Good fight," he said, offering her his hand. Flux looked at him with something like wonder. "You did not try to defeat me with strength or speed or adaptation." "No," Murphy said. "I used what humans are best at, turning problems into solutions." The alien referee looked confused. The human wins, but his methods were not honorable. Combat Admiral Morrison stood up in the spectator section. "With respect, honor is a luxury that humans can't afford. We learn to fight for survival, not for glory." The leader of the Galactic Council, an ancient being called the Speaker, descended to the arena floor. All the alien champions gathered around as well. The humans stood together, tired but proud. "Have witnessed something remarkable," the Speaker said. "We sent our finest warriors, each perfect in their own way. Earth sent something different." Commander Torres joined Morrison in the arena. "Earth sent products of a world that tried to kill them every day of their lives. Your champions fought with honor and tradition," Torres continued. "Our people fought with stubbornness and creativity. They fought to survive." The Speaker nodded slowly. "You understand now. Your species does not just adapt to challenges. You transform challenges into advantages." "Every human carries the experience of living on a death world," Morrison said. "We don't train for combat. We train for survival. And survival means never giving up, no matter what." The Kronari champion Thax stepped forward. "We have learned something valuable today. Strength is not just about power. Speed is not just about movement," added Zith, the Vexus champion. "Intelligence is not just about calculation," said Corex, the Nethic champion. "Endurance is not just about resistance," said Brofin, the Gorvani champion. "And adaptation is not just about changing form," finished Flux. The Zephrian champion, the speaker, raised his arms to address the entire gathering. The Galactic Council welcomes humanity as full members, but more than that, we ask that you share your knowledge with us. Teach us what it means to be survivors. As the ceremony concluded, the 5 human champions stood together. They had proven that sometimes the most dangerous opponents weren't the strongest or fastest or smartest. Sometimes the most dangerous opponents were the ones who refused to quit. Dr. Walsh spoke for all of them. They sent their best warriors. We sent humans. Turns out, on a death world, that's the same thing. Years later, military academies across the galaxy would study the Earth trials. They would learn about the death world philosophy that true strength comes not from perfection, but from the ability to adapt, survive, and keep fighting when everything tells you to give up. The humans had shown the galaxy something new. They had proven that survivors were more dangerous than warriors. And in a universe full of challenges that made them the most valuable allies anyone could have.